So iPadOS without a doubt got the biggest overhaul at WWDC this year compared to the changes in iOS, macOS and watchOS, where it's mainly focused on the new design. It's clear Apple is finally taking the iPad seriously. The update isn't just about polishing the edges, it's a complete rethinking of how the iPad works, how it looks, and what it can be used for. We've heard for years that the iPad could be a laptop replacement, and while it's come close in the past, iPadOS 26 might actually be the update that gets us there. But let's start with the most obvious change visually, that's the design. Apple has introduced a brand new visual language across all of its platforms this year called Liquid Glass. Now, ever since iOS 7, we've had this flat, minimal aesthetic, which at the time was a huge departure from the skeuomorphic design of earlier iOS versions, but for the last decade it hasn't really evolved all that much. That changes though with Liquid Glass. The interface now feels more alive, animations are smoother, elements are more dynamic, and everything feels like it has more depth. The translucent, refractive look mimics what we've seen from visionOS, and it gives everything this futuristic, almost holographic feel. When you interact with windows and elements, you'll notice they behave differently now. They shimmer and shift like actual glass, reacting to lighting and motion in more complex ways. I've seen people say online that it's a little gimmicky and isn't very practical, but personally, I love this. It breathes new life into the iPad experience and makes it feel more modern again. Sure, it's only developer beta 1, so Apple's definitely going to tweak a few things before the final release, but for now this new design language does make the software feel fresh. You know what else would be a fresh thing to do? If you took a minute to click that subscribe button. That was a horrible segue, but regardless, do it now. It's free and would bring you the latest about Apple right subscription box, so please consider it. Join the Surround Byte gang now. Now let's talk about the functional changes, because this is where iPadOS 26 really shines. Apple has completely rethought multitasking on the iPads, and it's honestly about time. For years we've had this awkward in-between system with split view and slide over, which are fine for more casual use but not ideal for productivity. Then they gave us Stage Manager, which was supposed to change everything, but ended up being a half-baked compromise that only worked on M-series iPads. With iPadOS 26, however, Apple's finally admitted the Mac way of doing things is just better, and so they essentially brought that experience over to the iPad. You can now freely resize and move windows around the screen, just like you can on a Mac. There are even the familiar traffic light buttons in the top left corner of each window, letting you minimize, maximize, or even close windows with a single tap. It's such a small detail, but immediately makes the iPad feel much more like a desktop environment. You can also now open multiple windows of the same application, snap windows into precise layouts, halves, thirds, quarters for example, and when you close and reopen an application, it does remember the size and position of the last window. These are the kind of features we wanted for years, and they're finally here. It's also worth mentioning that Apple has removed the old split view and slide over features entirely. That's been a little controversial. Some users, especially those who use an iPad more as a casual tablet, really like those options. I personally did use slide over quite a bit, and I'll miss the simplicity of it, but I also understand why Apple made this choice. Having multiple multitasking systems running at once creates a fragmented experience. Now it's unified, there's just one multitasking interface, and it's consistent across all use cases. That simplicity is going to be better for most consumers in the long run, even if there's initially a bit of a learning curve. Here's the part that surprised me the most though. This new windowing system isn't just for the high-end iPads, it's coming to every device that supports iPadOS 26, including the entry-level $349 iPads. That's a huge deal, guys. For the longest time, Apple's kept its best iPadOS features locked behind the M-series chipsets. If you didn't have an M1, M2, M3, or M4 iPads, you missed out on things like Stage Manager. That's no longer the case, however. Now everyone gets the same multitasking options. That makes the base iPad a much more competent laptop replacement for many consumers. It also means if you bought a more expensive iPad thinking it would give you more exclusive features, like I did with my iPad Air, you might feel a little cheated. I assumed the Air would have some long-term software advantages over the base model, but now both of these run the same OS with the same multitasking capabilities. The only difference is the performance and memory, which obviously still doesn't make a difference for heavier workloads. Still, it's refreshing to see Apple's not gatekeeping key functionality anymore. Another surprise was the addition of the Preview application. Mac users know how useful Preview is. It's incredibly versatile for working with PDFs and images. Bringing that to the iPad is a big win. You can now annotate documents using the Apple Pencil and make edits on the fly. And for those who like journaling or note-taking, the Journal application is finally coming to the iPad, complete with support for handwriting. I know a lot of people have wanted that since it launched on the iPhone, so I'm glad they finally brought it at last. Whether you're a student, a creative, or someone who just likes to organize your thoughts, this is a welcome addition. There's also a more Mac-like experience when using accessories like the Magic Keyboards. The pointer now behaves more like it does on macOS, adapting to different elements and feeling more precise. There's a new menu bar as well, giving you quick access to app-specific commands and settings. This makes the iPad feel much more like a desktop interface and less like a scaled-up iPhone. A new swipe-up gesture brings all open windows into view, kind of like mission control on the Mac. It's a simple but powerful way to stay organized. And yes, Apple finally did something about the Files app. It's always been one of the weakest parts of iPadOS, but now it's much more capable. You can resize columns, collapse folders, and even customize folder icons with different colors, symbols, and emojis, just like on a Mac. You can drag folders into the dock for quick access, and perhaps most importantly, you can now assign default apps to file types. That's a feature Mac users take for granted, and now iPad users finally get it too. One of the biggest frustrations with the iPad before was that apps had to stay in the foreground while exporting videos or rendering content. With iPadOS 26, however, that's no longer the case. Apps can now run background processes, so you can kick off a big export and then switch over to another application without losing progress. That kind of multitasking capability is essential for any device claiming to replace a laptop, and the iPad finally has this. Another quiet but meaningful improvement is the ability to manage microphone input depending on the Apple website. If you've ever used a Mac, you'll know how convenient this is. Whether you're in a Zoom call, recording a voice memo, or using Safari, you can now select which mic input to use without diving deep into the settings application every time. All of these changes add up to something I honestly did not think I'd be saying anytime soon. iPadOS feels complete. There will be those who still want some niche features. Some want terminal, some want Xcode, others want more desktop-like applications, but for the vast majority of users, this update ticks all the boxes. It finally delivers on the vision Apple's been selling for years, an iPad that's not just fun to use, but powerful enough to do real work. Now, just to be clear, I haven't installed iPadOS 26 on my iPad Air just yet. I'm being cautious because these early developer betas are notorious for nuking battery life, and I actually want to keep my iPad usable for now. That said, I did install iOS 26 on my 14 Pro Max. That battery is already at 76% health, so I figured why not? The battery's on its last legs anyway, and I've really enjoyed playing around with liquid glass on that device, so I'm excited to get hands-on with iPadOS 26 later this year, especially to see how well the new multitasking works in daily usage. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What are you most excited about with iPadOS 26? Do you think this finally makes the iPad a true productivity device? And do you think Apple will keep building on this or stop here? Make sure to like this video if you found it helpful, and of course, subscribe for more Apple content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.